go out to the garage and pull down that coffee can of dead drill bits. The snapped ones, the dull ones, the ones you've been meaning to throw out for 9 years. Now watch what I do with them. That whole handful of junk is going into this fire, and it's coming out as one solid bar of steel. And by tonight, it's an axe I'd put up against any $300 axe on the shelf. Same steel, different price tag. Today I'm going to show you how to turn a can of broken drill bits into a working axe, using a fire, a hammer, and about $4 of stuff you buy in the laundry aisle. And I'll show you every step of it, start to finish, while you watch. Here's the job. Part 1. Pick your junk, because not every piece of scrap in your garage is worth the fire. And there's a 5-second test that tells you which is which. Part 2, the fire and the hammer. The junk goes in a rusty handful of nothing and comes out one welded bar. And I'll show you the 10-second mistake almost everybody makes right there. The one that burns good steel down to sparks and there is no getting it back, ever. Part 3, harden it, blacken it, hang it on hickory. After that, I'm going to drop this axe head in a tray of acid, walk away, and come back to it later in the video. And I want you to see what comes up out of the steel while we're talking. It's worth waiting for. And at the end, I'll tell you where that fancy tiger stripe pattern actually came from. It was never a luxury. It started as a poor man's fix for bad metal, and that's the best thing in this video. A can of dead drill bits into an axe that bites clean through a log. That's the whole thing. My name's Earl. I spent 11 years in a truck shop pulling springs off frames, which is where I learned that the best steel in America is usually lying in a pile out back. So let's start. Part 1, pick your junk. Before anything else, go light your fire. Dump the charcoal in, turn the air on, walk away. It takes a good 20 minutes to come up to forging heat, and while it does, there's nothing to do but sort scrap and watch it glow. So if this is the kind of thing you want more of, tap subscribe. Step 1, the spark test. Take one drill bit and touch it to a running grinder for 1 second. 1 second, that's all. Now look at what comes off it. Good high carbon steel throws a bright shower that bursts. The sparks fly out and then split. Little forks and starbursts, and there's a lot of them. Soft junk steel throws thin orange streaks that go straight out and die. Long, lazy, boring. That's mild steel, and mild steel will never hold an edge no matter what you do to it, no matter how long you stand there hammering. So don't waste your fire on it. Step 2, don't just grab everything in the can, sort it. Drill bits are what they call high-speed steel, and I'll tell you exactly what's in it in a minute. But the short version is, it's hard as the devil, and it holds an edge forever. What it is not is friendly. It's brittle. Hard and brittle is wonderful in a drill bit, and it is a bad idea in an axe, because an axe gets hit. So we're going to cut it with something tough. Go to any brake shop or any junkyard and ask for one leaf off a leaf spring. They'll hand it to you. It's free, they've got a pile of them, and it's the toughest common scrap steel in America. Step 3, the ratio, and this is the part people get backwards. You want roughly 1 part drill bits to 3 parts leaf spring by weight. 1 handful of bits, 3 handfuls of spring. The bits are the seasoning, the spring is the meat. Go heavier on the bits, and you'll build yourself a very hard axe that chips the first time it finds a knot. So what are we actually working with here? That drill bit in your can is almost certainly M2 high-speed steel, and M2 is not plain steel at all. It's about 0.85% carbon, 6% tungsten, 5% molybdenum, 4% chromium, and about 2% vanadium. Tungsten and vanadium are what let a drill bit stay sharp while it's glowing red inside a piece of steel. That's expensive alloy. That's the same family of stuff that shows up in knife catalogs with a fancy name and a fancy price on it. The leaf spring is 5160, about 0.6% carbon with a little chromium in it. Lower carbon than the drill bit on purpose. That's the toughness. The American Bladesmith Society makes a man bend a blade 90 degrees without it snapping to earn his journeyman stamp, and 5160 is what an awful lot of them use to pass that test. It bends instead of breaking. That's exactly what you want holding an axe edge together. And an old flat file, if you've got one, that's 1095, 9/10 to 1 full percent carbon, which is the identical steel a $150 bushcraft knife brags about on the box. Same steel, different price tag. Hang on to that. It comes back later. Part 2, the fire and the hammer. Step 4, the canister. And this is the trick that makes the whole thing possible. You cannot just pile loose round drill bits on an anvil and beat them together. They'll squirt out sideways, and you'll spend an afternoon chasing them across the shop floor, which I have done. So we cheat the way every working smith cheats. Take a 6-inch piece of 2-inch square tubing. Stand the drill bits up in it, pack the spring steel in around them, and fill the gaps with a spoonful of charcoal dust. The charcoal eats the oxygen inside so nothing scales up in there. Then weld a cap on each end. Now it's one solid package that can't get away from you. Step 5. Flux it. When the canister comes up to a bright orange, pull it out and sprinkle borax on it. 1 flat tablespoon of borax, that's 1 good spoonful out of the $20 mule box from the laundry aisle, and that box will last you 11 years. The borax melts into a glass and coats the steel, and that glass does 2 jobs. It keeps oxygen off the metal, and it eats away the scale that's already there. Steel will not weld to steel through a layer of scale. It'll weld through nothing at all. Step 6. This is the one. Bring it up to welding heat, and welding heat is a bright yellow going white, around 2,300 degrees, around 2,300. But here's the trouble. High carbon steel welds down around 250 to 250, and it starts to burn just above that. Plain 1084 burns at 2,350. You have got about a 100-degree window between welded and ruined, and you're judging it by eye. So here's how you read it. Watch the surface. When the flux goes thin and glassy and the bar looks wet, like it's sweating, that's your moment. Out it comes, out when it sweats. If you leave it in and you start seeing little sparks coming off the bar itself, sparklers, fireworks, that's not pretty. That's the carbon burning out of your steel and leaving. The grain structure is destroyed and there is no fixing it. You can't heat it back. You can't hammer it back. You throw it out and start over. Out when it sweats, not when it sparkles. Step 7. Set the weld. On the anvil, light taps first, up and down the bar, just to set it, not big swings. Big swings on a fresh weld tear it apart before it's taken. Once it's set, back in the fire, and now you can hit it like you mean it. Draw it out, fold it back on itself, weld it again. 3 folds is plenty. Step 8, shape the head. Draw the bar out, fold one end around a punch to make the eye, and forge the cheeks down so the bit tapers. Punch, then drift the eye open with a tapered wedge until the handle will seat. Take your time on the eye. A crooked eye means a crooked axe, and no amount of sharpening fixes an axe that doesn't swing straight. So that's the map. Sort it, stack it, flux it, weld it when it sweats, fold it, shape it. Now let's talk about what that axe costs at the store, because I want you to see the arithmetic. A Gränsfors Bruk Scandinavian forest axe, hand-forged in Sweden, runs $240. A Council Tool Velvacut Dayton American felling axe is $255. Their Hudson Bay camp axe, the little one, is $169. Now I want to be fair here because I'm not going to stand here and tell you those are bad axes. They're wonderful axes. Gränsfors has been forging by hand in the same town since 1902, and they put the smith's initials on the head, and that is worth something. But let's count what's actually in your hand. An axe head is about 2 pounds of plain carbon steel. New carbon bar stock from a supplier runs $5 to $10 a pound. So there is somewhere between $10 and $20 of steel in a $255 axe. Everything else is forging, finishing, the handle, the shipping, and the name. And your version of that same steel is free. Not cheap, free. The brake shop is paying to have that spring hauled away. Now go look at knives, because that's where it gets funny. Walk into any outdoor store and you'll find blades at $150, $200 with 1095 high carbon stamped on the box like it's a secret formula. 1095 is 0.9% carbon and almost nothing else. It's the oldest, plainest, cheapest blade steel there is. It is the exact steel in a worn-out flat file you'd pay $2 for in a coffee can at a flea market. Same steel, different price tag, and the third thing they'll sell you is the idea that you can't do this. That you need a shop, a striker, a $5,000 gas forge, 20 years of training. Blacksmiths in this country made tools out of scrap for 150 years with a coal fire, an anvil, and a hammer, and half of them were farmers doing it in February because there was nothing else to do. Why does welding 2 different steels together even work? Think of it like a good ladder. The rails are the tough part. They flex, they take the load, they don't snap. The rungs are the hard part, and that's where the work happens. Weld them into one piece, and you've got something that does both jobs at once, and neither one could do it alone. Hard steel alone shatters. Tough steel alone won't hold an edge. Together, they're an axe, and this isn't folk theory. It's how blades were made for 1,000 years. Pattern welded swords turn up all over Europe from the migration period right through the early Middle Ages. Smiths taking bars of whatever iron and steel they had, of all different carbon contents, and forge welding them into one blade because no single piece they owned was good enough by itself. My mother's ledger has a 1934 entry for a hammerhead, 60 cents. Somebody made the handle, all right? Some more tricks, and we'll start with the cheapest. First trick, the forge itself. You don't need a forge. You need a hole and some air. Take an old brake drum, set it on 3 lengths of pipe for legs, run a 2-inch pipe up through the bottom hole, and put a hairdryer on the end of that pipe with a piece of duct tape. That's it. That's a forge. Fill it with charcoal, not briquettes, the lump kind, about $9 a bag. And that hairdryer will push it past 2,000 degrees, which is more than enough. Brake drums are free at the same shop giving you the spring. My whole first setup cost me the price of a bag of charcoal and a hairdryer my mother left behind, which was, I'll admit, still slightly pink. Second trick, where the free steel actually is ranked so you stop paying for it. Number 1, leaf springs, free at any brake shop or junkyard. 5160, best all-purpose blade steel in the country. Number 2, old flat files at flea markets, $1 to $3, $10.95, edge like a razor. Number 3, drill bits, high-speed steel, in your can already. Number 4, lawnmower blades, decent medium carbon, free every spring on the curb. Number 5, coil springs off a car, same 5160 family, you just have to cut and straighten them first. What to avoid? Rebar, which is mystery mild garbage. Anything chrome-plated. And anything galvanized, and I'll come back to that one because it matters. Third trick, hardening it without a thermometer, using a magnet. Heat the finished head up until a magnet won't stick to it. Steel loses its magnetism at about 1,314 degrees, around 1,400. Right about the point it's ready to harden, which is the single most useful accident in metalworking. So you touch a magnet to it every few seconds, and the second it doesn't grab, that's your heat. Straight into a bucket of oil, edge first, and hold it dead vertical. Old motor oil, canola oil, doesn't matter much, it'll flare. Then temper it. Kitchen oven, 400 degrees, 1 hour. 400 degrees, 1 hour, and the surface runs a light straw color. That takes the glass brittleness out and leaves you hard where it counts. Now, my neighbor Ruth's nephew, Carl. Carl watched me do this exactly once and decided he had it. He built the brake drum forge in an afternoon, which I'll give him. He did it right. Packed his canister, fluxed it, got it up to yellow. And he told me later he thought, well, if yellow's good, I'll give it another minute and really make sure. He came over the next morning with the bar in a feed sack and set it on my bench. It had crumbled at the edges like a piece of shortbread. When he hammered it, the corners had just fallen off. Carl said, "What did I do?" And I said, "You cooked it." 6 weeks of watching the fire, and he learned it in 1 minute, out when it sweats, not when it sparkles. He's made 4 axes since and hasn't burned one. Fourth trick, the etch. And let's go look at that head I dropped in the tray a while back. There it is. Pull it out, rinse it. Look at that. All those layers of drill bit and spring steel we folded together are still in there as separate ribbons. And they've got different amounts of carbon and chromium in them, so the acid eats them at different speeds. The high carbon ribbons go dark, the low carbon ribbons stay bright. That's the tiger stripe. That's not a finish somebody sprayed on. That pattern is the actual inside of your steel showing itself, and it's plain white vinegar, $4 a gallon at the grocery store. Warm it up a little, drop the head in for 2 hours, pull it, scrub it with baking soda to kill the acid, and dry it. 2 hours in warm vinegar, that's all it takes. Ferric chloride from an electronics shop works faster and costs about $15, but vinegar's already under your sink. Now, where did this come from? Because this is where it gets good. Nobody invented pattern welded steel to make it pretty. They invented it because their iron was terrible. Before about 1850, if you were a smith in Europe, you couldn't buy a bar of consistent steel. It didn't exist. What you had was bloomery iron, a spongy lump out of a small furnace where the carbon was scattered through it at random. 1 inch of that lump was hard as glass, and the inch next to it was soft as butter. You couldn't make a sword out of it. It would either shatter or bend. So they cheated the only way they could. They cut it into strips, sorted the strips by how they behaved, stacked the hard ones and the soft ones in a deliberate order, and welded the pile into 1 bar. That's pattern welding. It was an averaging trick. It was a workaround for bad material by men who couldn't afford better, and the stripes were just the seams showing. Then in 1856, Bessemer figured out how to make consistent steel by the ton, and within a generation, the whole technique was pointless. Anybody could buy a bar that was the same all the way through. Pattern welding basically died out as a working method, and here's the reversal. Skip ahead to 1908, Henry Ford builds the Model T and puts vanadium steel in the springs, more than twice as strong as ordinary steel and lighter with it. Best steel in the country, and it's under a car. 20 years later comes the Depression, and there is a Model T rusting behind every barn in America. Store steel costs money nobody has. So the Smiths went out back with a hacksaw and cut up those springs. And they made knives and axes and chisels and plow points out of the finest alloy steel of the age for nothing. The old way didn't lose. The old way just started using better junk. Fifth trick, hanging it. Buy a replacement hickory handle at the hardware store for about $12. Do not buy the shiny lacquered one. Look at the end grain and pick the one where the growth rings run parallel to the axe blade, not across it. That's the difference between a handle that lasts 20 years and one that snaps in November. Rasp the top of the handle down till the head slides on with hand pressure and stops about an inch short. Then drive the head on by turning it upside down and pounding the butt of the handle on the ground. The head drives itself on, and you can't overhit it. Saw the top off flush, drive a wooden wedge in the kerf, then a steel wedge across it, and skip the varnish. Boiled linseed oil, wiped on, 3 coats, and it'll never slip in your hand when it's wet. Now, honest scope, because there's a fair bit this won't do. It won't work on carbide. If your drill bits have those little gray tips brazed on the end, that's tungsten carbide. And carbide does not forge. It's a ceramic, basically. Heat it and hammer it, and it shatters sometimes at you. Sort those out and throw them in a different can. It won't work on stainless. Stainless needs a controlled atmosphere and a heat-treating oven with a thermometer, and you will not do it in a brake drum with a hairdryer. It won't turn junk into a chainsaw. This is an axe. 2 hours of work with an axe will do what a chainsaw does in 4 minutes, and I know that, and so does everybody who owns both. And it will take you longer than you think. Your first canister may not weld. Mine didn't. There's a real chance you spend a Saturday and end up with a bar that comes apart in a seam and has to go back in the fire. That's not failure, that's the tuition, and it's cheaper than the $255. Now the warning, and this one's not about the axe, it's about you. Never ever put galvanized steel in a fire. Galvanized is the dull gray coating you see on fence posts, chain link hardware, ductwork, roofing screws, and a lot of anonymous brackets. That coating is zinc, and zinc boils off well below forging heat. Breathing zinc fumes gives you what welders call metal fume fever. Chills, fever, aching feels exactly like a bad flu that arrives 4 hours after you quit for the day. It usually passes in a day or two. It is also entirely avoidable, and there's no reason to find out. If a piece of scrap is dull silver gray with a crystal pattern on it, or it came off a fence, it doesn't go in the fire. Not for 1 minute, and here's the other, leave it alone. If you're at a flea market and you find an old head with a name stamped on it, Plum, Collins, Kelly, True Temper, and it's $8 and covered in orange rust, don't melt it down and don't grind it into a new shape. Wire brush it, hang it on a new handle, and sharpen it. That head was forged in Pennsylvania before the war out of steel, just as good as anything you'll make, and somebody already did the hard part, buy it. Carl's first axe, the second one after the shortbread, is 3 years old now. He splits kindling with it every winter, and he's cracked one handle, not the head. Total cost, a spring the shop gave him, a can of bits, $12 for hickory, and one Saturday. Now that stripe pattern, I said I'd come back to it. Go on the internet and look up a Damascus knife. You'll find them at $400, $800, $1,200, and the whole pitch is the pattern. The swirls, the ripple, the tiger stripe. It's sold as the top of the trade. The finest thing a smith can put in your hand. But you know what that pattern actually is now. It's the seam. It's the visible evidence that the man who made it didn't have one single piece of steel good enough to use by itself. So he welded scraps together and hoped the average came out right. Every stripe on a $1,200 knife is a scar from a shortage. It's a poverty technique. It's the mark of a smith making do. And we now charge a premium for the look of making do. The steel was never the expensive part. It's in your junk drawer, in your brake shop scrap pile, in a coffee can on your shelf. What they're selling you is the labor, the name, and a pattern that means somebody was once too poor to buy good metal. There's no commercial for the thing you already own. There never has been, so nobody makes one. Here's your whole shopping list. A leaf spring, free, ask at any brake shop. A can of dead drill bits, already yours. A brake drum and a hairdryer, free and free. Lump charcoal, $9 a bag. A box of borax, $5, and it'll last you a decade. A gallon of white vinegar, $4. A hickory handle, $12. That's about $30, and most of that is charcoal and a handle. The steps. Spark test your junk, 1 second on the grinder, and keep the ones that burst. 1 part drill bits to 3 parts leaf spring. Pack it in square tubing and cap the ends. Flux with a flat tablespoon of borax. Weld it at bright yellow, and out when it sweats, never when it sparkles. Fold it 3 times, shape the head, punch, and drift the eye. Harden it when a magnet quits grabbing. Quench in oil edge first. Temper at 400 degrees for 1 hour. 2 hours in warm vinegar for the pattern. Hang it on hickory, boiled linseed oil, 3 coats. Go out to the garage tonight and do the spark test. That's all. 1 drill bit, 1 second on the grinder, and watch what comes off it. You'll know inside of a second whether you've been sitting on good steel this whole time, and I'd bet the handle you have. 2 things I want to hear in the comments. First, what's the best piece of free steel you've ever been handed, and did you use it, or is it still sitting in the corner? And second, for anyone who's already done this, what did your first weld actually fail on? I want to know if it was the flux or the heat, because I've got a theory and I'd like to be proven wrong.